Okay, so now that we're recording, just to recap slightly, the tough students have kind of set an agenda of a bunch of topics for today, and I'm going to turn it over to them to walk us through what they've got.
Okay, but yeah, today basically we're going to go over the affinity mapping and maybe ideate together with Crazy Eight. Before I start, does anyone on the team have anything to add for that? Okay, cool. And also Guo in the chat just said that they sent an email invitation to both of you for Dovetail.
Cool.
Okay, let me know if you guys have access to the doc then.
I'm able to get in now. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I can share my screen right now and you can feel free to follow my cursor or just like do your own thing. Basically, I'll first show you our older affinity map that we did last Thursday in class together. These are all of the notes that we got from this last 6 interviews, and we found some major themes with pain points. One is in navigation, like someone was saying how they literally did not want to use boards because like it doesn't support two top level navigation, like GitLab.org and GitLab.com have two separate boards. And then there are also issues with Clutter UI. Some people are saying how like Trello is like a lot simpler to use, and then they don't really want to use issue boards because it seems really complex, and then a lot of labels that they don't really need to see and don't know how to filter out. And then this chunk is talking about the current process of identifying what work is blocked, so we can ignore that for now. And then there's also this part about usability issues. We can compile a doc for you guys to look at later because these are more isolated pain points. And then other themes is like related to working Jeopardy. We can talk about that in depth later. And then there's also themes about it's difficult for them to write user stories, and the process of creating new tasks is really manual and they have to like jump between multiple pages. And yeah, because it seems like something that a lot of PMs need to do a lot daily, and then they wish that there's some sort of AI that can help them with like a kind of like a draft to start with. And a Jira user also mentioned how the workflow is really like disjointed. Like he has to like go from a conversation with the client to write up a doc for himself and then another doc for all stakeholders and then go to PRD to see what customer wants to see. And then just like a lot of steps that he highlighted in this note that he wished like a product could support. And then there are also some like we asked some questions about what work they found repetitive and how they feel about AI. And yeah, those are their answers there. Okay, does anyone else have anything to add on or any questions at this point? Okay, then I'll jump to the more fine-combed version of the map. So in our last meeting, we all decided that we want to focus on the track progress of work parts out of all the themes that we mentioned earlier, because we just like did a blind vote and it turns out that's what we found to be most impactful. But yeah, definitely let us know if you think otherwise. And we broke down like, okay, so it is hard for them to understand the current progress right away and what is the reason. And we kind of grouped similar tickets together for the reason why it's hard for people to identify work that's in jeopardy. And then the first main reason is that they found out there's so many steps to search or like set up a way to find relevant information. Like for example, like someone, I think either Ramona or Allison interviewed some person that needs to use filters to search for things, and they found the search process is a little bit like a lot of work for them. And yeah, some people talk about having to set up a few different boards or different filters, and the process of configuring board is just like not very easy for them. And then person two is a GitLab user, and they said that they actually do not use boards at all. They come up with their own list within the issue, and they have like URLs linked to each list. And they have to like hover over the URL to see what the progress is. And then, yeah, so that's the first part. And also, like, whoever interviewed these people, like, feel free to jump in if you have more context to add. You can interrupt me if you want. And then the second reason why it's like hard to understand the progress right away is like there's no big picture overview. Like person six said that the board can only be grouped by epic. There's no straightforward way to switch to sprints. And then person two is saying that the one with like the list is saying how he can't see like in progress or like if nobody's working on something right now right away because those things don't show up with the URL. He has to click into the issue to see that. And then person six is something that Ramona mentioned in the Slack channel, was saying how they like to see like a sprint timeline view, like what they have in Jira. Yeah, and then the reason there's like no Jeopardy or progress indicator. Person four said that it could be helpful to have one of those if something is untouched for a few days. And person three wants to know a way to like track progress automated. Like they want to know if they're on track to getting to a certain release date or not. And then person one is like more interested in when something will be completed. And then the four reasons why it's like hard for them to understand progress is like sometimes engineers don't really update issues. They don't really have the incentives to. And like communication really just depends on like the team dynamics and the relationships they have. So this is not necessarily like a pain point, it's just how people currently do things. Um, Yeah, like for example, person two was saying how he doesn't want to be the person that's like running after engineers for status updates all the time. So he tried to understand it himself by digging into the comment section, see what's the latest update. And sometimes he would use the View AI summary to kind of generate the summary a couple of times a day and just to like, have a quick understanding of what people are talking about. But it could be difficult for him because sometimes it gets really technical and he wished there's like an AI that can help him explain the code to him in a more digestible way. And person six said that Jeopardy conflicts tend to resolve in meetings or one-on-ones. And that's something that person seven and a few others said as well. And he would use like his custom set of labels to indicate what's blocked and reach out. And another issue with labels that a lot of people mentioned that sometimes when people create duplicated labels and they just don't really go through, or sometimes tickets were missed because they didn't know they're like different labels are named different ways. And yeah, and then person six mentioned that he doesn't know what the person is handling on top of what they're working on. So sometimes that could be like that could make communication a little bit harder. And person seven was just saying how he usually just like Slack the engineers or like just hop on Huddle to talk about it with them. And he said that PMs like to take it, the ideas of tickets a lot more than engineers because engineers have to do it on like GitHub and like a bunch of other places. So they don't really like have a reason to do it on GitLab as well. And then I guess the last reason is like overwhelming UI and like very complex interactions. Like they think there's like way too many information on the boards that can kind of distract them from like just on a planning task. And sometimes it feels like he only cares about the priority labels and the at-risk label and the workflow labels, and the rest is just visually cluttering. But currently there's like no way to filter them out because there's only like a turn on and off one or like only show the risk level one, but there isn't one where you can just like filter out only these three. And yeah, like someone was saying complexity, like sometimes people don't want to adapt it because it's more complex than what they currently have. And someone likes Trello because it's good enough for a lot of things and it's simpler. And P6 is like he doesn't use a filter to limit how many labels you can see. But yeah, these are the main parts of why people currently have a hard time understanding current progress right away. Do you guys have anything to add?
Yeah, so kind of to touch on what Aria mentioned earlier about the labels, through a lot of my interviews too, people have mentioned just having issues keeping track of the labels as PMs just because everyone in their team would have access to create these labels. So what happens in multiple occasions is that people would create the same labels, but under different names. So something like progress and then in progress, they're the same thing, but there's no way for the system to recognize that. So when they create the label, that becomes like a very repetitive thing for the PM to go through at the end of each quarter. And this one specific interviewee we had mentioned how a lot of these labels also become orphaned because they're not attached to anything. So they have to go through all of this at each sprint to kind of like clear it up, which can be very time consuming and redundant for them. So they mentioned, I think this was touched on earlier as well, just having a way that could be automated and kind of suggest to users if they're creating a label that already exists, where if there's something similar that they can attach it to. And also, I think with the progress thing, just having a very clear visual representation, if they're coming onto the dashboard that they can view right away, would be something very helpful. A lot of our interviewees also use a lot of the competition tools, such as Jira, that was previously mentioned, and also Trello. So a lot of them mentioned a lot of features from Jira that they would love to see represented on the GitLab issue boards. So like the sprint view, for example, was something that one of our interviewees very much emphasized, since they said when they use their dashboards for sprint meetings, it's very hard to look at what they're focusing on for just that week or that specific sprint. So having something that could represent how much is being completed on a holistic view, given the timeline, would be very helpful for PMs to kind of identify if there's any specific items that might be blocked and go into that specific ticket from there.
I have a question about the Jira sprint view. As far as I'm aware, that's possible to replicate. So is the real issue there an inability to configure that themselves or not knowing that that view is possible?
It could be not knowing the view is possible. This user of ours, he mentioned that he didn't use the GitLab issue boards as much compared to these other tools. His company ended up switching to Jira later, but yeah, he also mentioned just not being able to find those like configurations or options.
Okay. So discoverability is the real, okay.
Mhm.
And I find it really interesting. I don't have much of a comment other than I find it interesting that you've gotten both feedback of I need the features of Jira, like multiple features listed, but I love the simplicity of Trello. Do you know what I mean? It's like, okay, well, how do you balance
Mhm.
giving all the things and keeping it simple? I thought that was an interesting call out.
Yeah, and that also I don't know, combines with, contrasts with, or something interestingly, the comment about like I want to see some labels, but I don't want to see other labels, but I want to see this status, but I don't want to see that status. Like it's a very yeah, they want to see a very specific subset of things and only those things, it seems.
The label thing I've heard, Chad, like that is
I,
definitely and I
I've heard that
understand the,
internally too. Like
yeah,
just
I
employees
understand
rely
that.
on them.
It's like, for example, everything I work on has my group label. I don't need to see that group label on the board because I've already filtered by it. So it's like, but I do want to quickly see the workflow status or what have you. And
Hmm.
so driving to what is the why behind these statements is the most important thing. And I
For
think that
sure.
you're doing a really good job of creating those categories of themes. Very well laid out here. I like this a lot.
We appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Like even doing like a quick competitive like analysis, we can see that I feel like other like Trello boards, like Kanban boards, are not as label driven as the GitLab ones. So maybe it means that people actually don't need to see all of them, or like they can like work well without them, maybe in some ways. Maybe, yeah, depends on context as well.
I
But
think for, sorry, Aria,
yeah,
finish.
go ahead, Ramona.
I think for labels, another thing that one of the interviewees said is that in each issue, the order of labels are all different. So let's say the word progress, it can show up in the first section, in the first place or in the middle or in the last. So it's hard for them to navigate through because there's no like clear structure of the, I guess, the sequence of labels.
I've heard that, Ramona, that's a good call out. People want to have an expectation of where these labels will always be. So when they're scanning, they can easily look for that one label because it's always first or it's always middle or whatever. But the way that we render them, I can't remember what the logic is. It appears to be haphazard. That's a good point. But if we zoom out again, it's like, well, what are they doing? What are they scanning for? And if they're scanning for workflow, for example, should it be a label? Or if they're scanning for something in jeopardy, should that be signaled through a label? Should it be something else?
Yeah, I think the labels contain a lot of different heterogeneous information for us right now. And it does sound like there are like specific pieces of structured data they wish were separated structured data.
Mhm.
And I think that's something Amanda's team is working on.
Yeah,
this year.
that's the direction we're headed this year. So if that's something that we can tease out of this in terms of like prioritizing what are those things, that's super helpful, but not to lead you in one direction or another.
Yeah, for sure. Like definitely like they're looking for a very specific type of information. And we happen to have some notes on them. But yeah, before that, like just want to quickly mention that in our first round of interview, people did say that it's a really repetitive process to even attach labels onto new issues. Like every time they create them, let's say they have to like apply 10 labels, maybe some organizations only do 3. I guess like some ways they wish there's a way to automate that. Okay, does anyone else have anything to say about this part?
Think some interviewees also said that they like more indicators. Let's say if one issue is untouched for 3 days, then they would like to see if there's like a color change or if there's like an indicator showing up. I think they also said that they would like to see which issue has comments underneath it. So like a little comment indicator would be nice. And then I think the recent interview we had, Allison and I had said that, wait, what was it? I think it's about like merge requests. Or is it?
Oh yeah.
I had was bot. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, those are pieces of information. Excuse me, sorry. Those are pieces of information that we do show in a list view for issues. So fair enough that someone might want to see that metadata there.
Yeah.
By the way, on the automation thing with labels, we do actually do a little bit of this internally within our own GitLab group, which is kind of like, I guess, our own internal workaround. So that may be interesting data for you. We have certain scoped labels that have like accompanying labels that go with them. So like a trick that I think many of us use, or at least I certainly use, is like if you add, for example, the label bug UX, like bug : UX, then there's a bot that will automatically apply the label type : bug. Or like if you add the label group : project management, then that bot will automatically add DevOps : plan, and maybe even some other ones. So like I think that we are internally kind of hacking together some tools that make it shorter for us to add all of the labels that are required for something, because something will almost kind of like auto-complete in. But that's not something that is generally available like for all of our users. It's something that we have internally that a bot does for us. So it could be an interesting case study and something somebody's trying to do around automation with adding labels.
We also have an open issue that I've seen some interest in lately of bundling labels, like creating a label.
I would love that.
Yeah, so like if you just added a single label, it would add these 5 predefined labels, which I think would be a pretty big win.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something that we debated about as well. But okay, wait, what are you gonna say?
We also have like issuer comment templates as a like user definable feature in our markdown editor, and I use that sometimes as well to like dump in a bunch of labels all as one, like basically just like paste it in as a snippet of code of text in my comment or in the description.
Yeah, and then oh yeah, like the other thought that just like randomly have is like, do people really need to create that many labels to, I guess, like manage the different tickets? Or is there like a different ways to organize them? But I just
That's
like,
exactly the right question. Like that's what we're talking about, automation of this process to make that overhead cheaper. But really the right question is, why does that exist? Is this the right application of that workflow? So I don't have an answer for you. That's something we would want to dig into, but that's the exact right question.
So the two kinds of labels that I just talked about that I will like shorthand because I know a bot will fill it in. One of them is categorizing the type of the issue, and another one is indicating who owns the issue. That's like the kind of data I'm trying to supply by putting in those labels, and that's because in our internal workflow, we need to use those labels. It's a convention of our team, and the GitLab team internally, I think, is very good about using labels in a rigid way. I don't know that all of our users are like that. There's nothing that means someone necessarily would be. I'd be interested to see how like real world users actually do it.
You know, I've in this, like that particular use case comes down to like we don't have native team functionality, innate that sort of thing. And I've seen people put emojis in the titles of things, like the titles of epics to indicate an emoji as a person. So to your point, Chad, everybody's doing something different.
Yeah.
But it's taking one more step back. It's like, what is that problem to solve? In this particular case, it's the team, or it's the role, or it's the assignee.
Yeah, and then yeah, just to like just go through the last two areas. So one is Jeopardy indicators. These are just like the metadata that we collected, just like what people want to know in order to like find out what is in jeopardy of meeting a deadline. So these are just like the things that, oh, I need to dig around and find out whether people are working on this project. So what are those things? So one obviously is like status, like health, open, closed. And yeah, sometimes you would need to like reach out to somebody if there's like nobody working on that thing. And then priority, like he usually like look at that and move down the list that way. Another interesting thing is that sometimes I noticed that at least two PMs that I interview like to order the Kanban board into a list format. And then
Can I ask a clarifying question about that? What do you mean by order the Kanban board into a list format?
yeah, this is a guy that Guo and I interviewed, but basically he was a GitLab PM on Gina's team, and he was saying, bless you. He was saying,
I thought I was muted.
and he was saying how he doesn't use the Kanban board at all. Instead, he has an issue. He creates an issue.
Oh, this was I see. Yeah. So he's got like a list of lists. So he's like flattening it into a single thing in the markdown.
And then another like Jira PM who works at a small startup was also using his Jira board in the list format instead of the Kanban board format. But some of his other team members might use it in the Kanban board format.
I'm sorry, did you by any chance find out why that was? Like, what was it about that single issue list that achieved some goal that they had that the board didn't achieve?
That's a good question. Go, do you remember if you mentioned that?
I remember what you
Yeah.
said was that he needs to be wrangling issues that span different projects or groups, and he can't put them on a single board. So he's just making like a bulleted list of links to the issues in a single issue.
Okay, that makes sense.
There may have been
Is
other
that the
reasons
same
you
for
mentioned that.
Jira as well, though?
I know in Jira you can have boards that span all of your different projects. You can have
Interesting.
like a my work board that's like issue everything assigned to you across anything that you can.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think that's partially because the boards in Jira are based on predefined workflows for issue types. So the columns are not going to, the columns are going to be the same.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too. I was using some of these like project management tools myself just for like my homework. I feel like as a just like not a PM as a person, I feel like it's easier for me to view it in a list because I think that's how Gina organized it for her team too. It's just like faster. This is what you need to do next.
So
Um,
consuming the information and understanding kind of what's next on the list, it was faster and easier when it's a list rather than like cards on a board
yes.
for
And then
you.
I also saw
Okay.
on the onboarding of Monday.com, they actually let you choose, okay, how would you prefer to manage your work? Select the option that works best for your team. And then they say sprint, scrum, great for sprint management and daily scrum, which is like the list. And then Kanban is like great for working on ongoing prioritized tasks.
I think Jira does a similar thing when you create a, maybe when you, at the level of a project, you choose these two different
Okay.
paths. Oops, I put
You're
up two.
very happy about that option.
Yeah, this is
Okay.
also I talked with Chad Woolley on our IDE and remote development team about a similar sort of thing where his team is using kind of like an extreme development style agile methodology and they're trying to manipulate our boards in order to get them to work for them, but they really have to do a lot of work to do it. And it's because they kind of just want like a continuous stream of like emergent prioritization as opposed to having like separate columns. They almost want like columns that flow into each other. Yeah, but he recommended something almost exactly like that, where he was like, when you create a project or whatever, like it should kind of be a divergent path where it's like either boards or Kanban or boards are like kind of like this agile thing.
Is it like automated workflow?
That's not exactly. I think that the way that it works for their team, and I think this is the way that a lot of people who work in that style do. Like he comes from a team called Pivotal that worked on a project called Pivotal Tracker. That's basically like a like agile board thing. And the way it works is basically just like your backlog is the feed that feeds directly into your current iteration, and your current iteration is just like the amount of points that you are predicted to be able to complete in a single iteration based on pass velocity that's just like brought in from the top of the queue. So it's a very like automatic planning method as opposed to like saying, I am assigning this issue to be in this iteration or in this sprint or in this milestone. It's just a different way of working, but the way that our boards are set up doesn't really work too well for it.
I see. Yeah, and then the other like Jeopardy indicator is like merge requests, kind of like what Allison mentioned earlier. So I don't think like I don't know if it's is there currently a merge request indicator on issue boards, or do people simply not know about it?
I
But
don't
yeah,
think there
No.
is. It is something that I could talk with Nick Brandt about that though, because yeah, there are a couple pieces of metadata like that that aren't on the card on a board, but are, they're like card-like representations of issues.
okay, I see. Yeah, I'm gonna like go through this super quickly so we'll have time to like narrow down on our problem and like ideate with crazy eights. But yeah, people look for like merge request indicator to know whether something's in jeopardy. If there's no merge request, like they know that maybe someone's not working on it. And then they also want to see comments updates. Yeah, like they want to see at a quick glance of like what's the ed history, what's the discussion. And
I
then
heard that yesterday in a customer call as well.
yeah, like more information on what's going on, like what's blocked, what's pending. And then how long someone is working on an issue. I think that's something like I think Ramona or Allison like mentioned as well. It's just like, oh, the signal they look for is like when the start date and the last updated date.
Like
So
the
like
age of an issue since it's been started.
yeah, I think
Okay.
so. And maybe also even like when was it last updated?
Okay.
Um, yeah. So that the decision they want to make is like, oh, should we rescope this ticket if it's
Yeah.
not deadline? Um, let's see. Okay, and then just like additional interactions to see more, yeah, they have to like go through this, can be slow, they don't want to hover over. And the last section is just about like workarounds, like some competitors they're using. Yeah, we kind of mentioned that earlier. So that's a gist.
I have one really quick question, and that is, and I think I saw it in that last column, but did anybody talk about using health status? It's a field today on the issue. It's like a red, yellow, green predefined list, but it's a manual setting. But that's visible on the board if it's used. Did anybody talk about using that? I saw it in your last
Yeah.
column. It was mentioned, this one, additional interaction, see more. It says something about wish it's filled up if no health status.
Yeah, I talked to that person with Aria, and I think there's two things going on. Their first one is just, I think engineers normally don't really update the status of the issues, and so they,
Yeah.
so maybe that's one, and then the second one is, even if they do, this PM and also I think the Jira, PM want to see other labels other than the status, so like the priority and also, like just more important labels, but now he has to see like all of the labels that he assigns to issues instead of like maybe like 2 or 3 labels that he just wants to see. So yeah, I think that's more about like the health status of things, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, does anyone else have anything to add with regarding to any of this? Okay, yeah, I think those are like a summary of our insights.
So the next thing that you've got on the agenda is doing some crazy eights. How did you want to do that? Is that something that you wanted to like have us participate in, or you wanted us to like observe, maybe give you feedback on as you're doing it or after you do it, or what's, tell me the way that it's helpful for you to do this with us.
Yeah, I think even before doing that, I think we should probably try to narrow down on one, like maybe like a how might we or like a problem that we feel like is most valuable
I
to,
see.
or at least I've actually never done the crazy eights before, even like the preparation before that, but I'm assuming that it'd probably be most helpful for crazy eights if we focus on one problem area, or is it, or else the ideations might be really scattered. But yeah, so I think, yeah, I think probably just like discussing, I guess, which one out of all of these. Or I also wrote Aria, if you scroll down a little bit. Also wrote out some how might we's that might be helpful for Chrissy Yates as well. But yeah, I guess like have you guys done Crazy Eights before? Or I guess like should we focus on specific problem area before doing that?
Honestly, the last time I did Crazy Eights was a very long time ago, in like a workshop in my 20s. But I thought that you intended to use that as a method of like narrowing down. Like basically just like the like, but you're talking about ideation on potential solutions with Crazy Eights. Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, if you want to narrow down on the thing before doing that, I think the question is like, what does the evidence tell you is the most compelling thing for you to address or make better?
I guess I'm curious about like using Crazy Eights to narrow down on a direction. Like
I think that would basically kind of be like, everybody like pick a couple that you think are compelling and list a couple of reasons, and then everybody does like the sticker voting sort of thing. But you know, whatever way makes sense for you to like pick the thing you're going to narrow down on. You know, you all were in the interviews. We weren't in the interviews, and you know, I want to try to limit the amount that I push you in one direction or another. So I would rather offer kind of more platonic advice than saying, oh, you should do this one or not that one. But you know, I would say follow the evidence wherever you've got like the most meat to like, oh yeah, like it's clear that this is the problem and it's clear that this person can't do this thing because of this. Try to narrow in on those.
I guess like from like a plan team perspective, like is there anything that jumps out to you, or like yeah, anything that feels like it's related to what you've been seeing or what you've been working on?
Really everything that you've mentioned, I can validate in recent customer conversations. So it's all the right direction. If it were me, I would go down the path of the win I can most quickly execute on, which you don't know yet because you're not that far down in solutioning. But if you have a hint of where we would have quick wins, I would start there personally. I don't think that's very helpful because we're not in solutioning, but
Well, I think a way to rephrase that might be the clearest problem. You know, if there's a problem, we're like, oh, like it's because this is this way that this person can't do this thing. You know what I mean?
another thing I might say is which of those, if you were to solve every one of those 5 themes, right? Which one of solving those 5 themes would give the most value? That would be another way I would look at it. So if I could solve all of them, which one would be the one that would reduce the most heartburn? I see one that stands out to me. I don't want to say, I see where you all land. But if you were to look at it that way, like if I solve the first one, how much heartburn does that, resolve versus the second one versus the third one and so forth. So that might be another way.
Yeah. Well, I'll hand it over to you, like however you want to lead it.
Honestly, I'm a little bit I'm a little bit unsure about whether we should use Crazy Eights to decide which problem to tackle or like go
Yeah, you
straight
don't need
into
to.
Can I frame one more way? Starting with the problem statement, which is understanding progress, right? So start there and say, if I reduce the steps it takes to search, will my ability to understand progress be improved? If I create a big picture overview, will my ability to understand progress be improved? If I create a progress indicator, will my ability to understand progress be improved? Like maybe talk to yourself that way and see if anything bubbles up more than another. And I agree from a Crazy Eights perspective, I liked it better for the ideation of the solution rather than making the initial decision.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, initially I was thinking more of using Crazy Eights for like ideating on different solutions as well. I think I'm trying to I think which
Should we do like a blind vote again?
yeah we can do
And just for a time check, we do have 15 minutes left in this time as well. So we probably won't get to everything you've got. I have some extra time to stick around if you all want to. but just to call that out.
Thank you, appreciate it. Yeah, I mean,
I guess maybe what?
oh, sorry, what were you gonna say?
Oh no, I was just say we can do the blind vote thing and that we can like maybe have like 1 or 2 like dots that we put on, and then we just see which one has the most. But yeah, what were you gonna say?
Or should we do the thing, Ramona, did you mean the thing that we did in our own meeting? Like we just write down our top 2 biggest impact problem in our
Yeah,
own, and then we
because
count 3, 2,
maybe
1, then we'll send it to the chat.
yeah. I mean like yeah, basically we need to figure out like what is the problem or issue that can create the most impact if we propose like design solutions. So we can just like all go through the notes and then we each write 1 or 2 and then we share it. Does that make sense?
I also want to offer you, you do not need to make this decision in front of me right now. If you want to have made this decision so that we can talk a little bit about digging deeper into the one you decide, that's fine. But like if you want to figure out a little bit more between you, like how to narrow down or whatever, there's no deadline relative to our advisory group for this hour today, you know? Um, just putting that out there.
Yeah, thank you, appreciate it. Would you, Amanda and Chad, would you like to participate as well? Because our professor said, you
I
know,
don't feel like I should, but if you want to do it right now, I would love to watch actually. By which I mean you don't have to, but if you do want to do it live, I'm very curious to see your process.
team, what do you guys think?
I guess for time's sake, I'm down to do the top 2 options in the chat that we can discuss. Like if we have any commonalities. So we can probably spend like 1 minute and then type in the chat, like what's your top 2
Yeah, and then
options.
we count.
Wait, if possible, Amanda and Chad, would you like to participate in a blind voting as well? In terms of like your top 2 issues.
Here's the thing is that I don't want to. I already feel like I have too much influence over the direction that you go with this. I don't want to push you one way or another. You did all of this work. You gathered the evidence. I want it to be your decision what way you go. I think, like Amanda said, all the stuff you've identified are real pain points. And fixing any of these is going to help users out. I would rather advise on like methods or like, you can bounce ideas off of me, but I don't want to say you should do this one over that one.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess what we're curious about is that, oh, if we were to pick this direction, like how would you think through this problem? Or like with the context, like with the additional context about the user and the space, like how would you make the decision of moving forward and whether or not we have any blind spots?
Yeah, I think why don't we get to the next step of what you've picked, and then we can certainly talk through that. I mean, to Chad's point, we don't want to influence what you pick. I get it's a chicken or in an egg situation, right? You want to know all of the circumstances around the thing before you pick it. But if we do that, we could influence you. So better, why don't you pick your top 2 or 3, and then we can go from there. And if number 1 ends up being much more complex or isn't as validated as number 2 that we've seen, we'll give you that information. You can always change your mind. That makes sense.
Yeah, that's perfect. I think that's what
Can I ask, as a group, do any of you like have a strong feeling like it should be this one or it shouldn't be that one? Or are you all kind of like not really sure which way to go? Like I'm wondering if you're all a little unsure which one to pick, or if you have like disagreements between you as a group about like direction to go, or like what you know what I mean?
I feel like we never really like talked about exactly what to tackle yet, right? But I think for me, like, I think I know, like, just for myself, like, I know which one I want to tackle.
Okay.
It just like it's
I
never
see
like
some nods also. So maybe you should do like the dot voting and then we'll see, because maybe you're all thinking of the same one anyway.
yeah.
Okay. Should we put it in the chat?
Wait, let's write it down first, and then we can
Yeah.
say 3, 2, 1, and then we put it in the chat, so we don't
Yeah,
influence each
sounds
other.
And if you need a timer, that's something I can do for you. How much time? Like a minute or?
Yeah, maybe. Thank you.
That's a minute.
Um, I guess we can. Is everybody ready? Then you guys can put it in the chat now.
Sorry, I think I sent it to like a private message, not everyone.
Just send it to Allison.
Yeah.
All right. So what do you got? Is that all 5 of you? Yes.
Yes. Okay, so it seems like it's between mostly about UI. It's, I guess, like labels and surfacing relevant metadata, and also nuclear jeopardy and progress indicator
Yeah.
as like the top two ones. I see.
Yeah, so we've got 2 no clear jeopardy as first. We've got gotta count in European on your hands when you're on a Zoom call. So you've got 2 no clear jeopardy as first. You've got 2 no clear jeopardy as second. So it's showing up in there a lot. And then many steps to search shows up a couple of times. Looks like between like if you do like ranked choice voting of these kind of thing, it seems like between those 2 come up the most. So do you 5 want to talk a little bit about the trade-offs between those 2 and which one kind of basically do you want to like kind of advocate for one or the other and try to come to a consensus between you?
Chad, what was the second one besides the progress indicator?
There's a couple that are many steps is I think the first column.
First one. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so it looks like first column and third column are the ones that are getting mentioned the most. And feel free to also like talk through what you're thinking.
Yeah, I guess I'm just thinking out loud right now. Like I can see some like commonalities between these in the sense that it seems like one problem is like people aren't seeing necessary information at a quick glance, so they have to kind of like dig deeper into the issue to see more information. And I think having no progress indicator kind of leads to many steps to search. So I guess like they are related.
That's interesting. So you think that not having that information at hand might lead them to do more searching and filtering, and then they run into
Right.
problems with doing that?
Yeah.
That's an interesting notion.
That's more of me thinking out loud, but also I'm also thinking I'm a little bit hesitant on I don't want to solutionize, but like more indicators on an already like really crowded board seems kind of like adding even more things
Well, that's
to
something
what's already
that
busy.
you can call out and like parking lot kind of as like a potential, potential downside or like potential negative side effect or something to look out for in trying to come up with a solution on that if that's the direction you go. What about everybody else? What are you thinking?
So my two choices are labels and no clear jeopardy and progress indicator. I think labels are actually the first thing I noticed when I first saw the issue board, because I think it was to me also a little bit overwhelming. And throughout like the interviews, it's like a recurring issue that people said. And then my second choice is no clear jeopardy and progress indicator. Partially also because of the UI layouts and with, I guess, the clutter of labels, lots of people cannot like recognize or I guess extract the important information. And I think from my last two interviews, people did say that, oh, they would like to see like a bigger picture or like, I guess, just visual indicators on progress.
Mhm.
Yeah, I can add on as well, like as the reason why I like chose like the no clear jeopardy progress indicator, because like throughout like the interviews, being able to like see the common theme of like people having different types of like workflows and like things that they use to like kind of see how like their updates, like they either like look through the comment thread on the issue or like they have like different setups on their issue board within itself. So um yeah, just like having, I think that like having a way to like kind of standardize this um this like issue like might uh like lead to like a quicker way to like get the overview of like understanding and progress as well. But also like to what Guo said, like since the issue board is already like super like visually cleared, I guess it might be something like that we have to like kind of dig more into to see how we might be able to like solve this in the most like balanced way.
Yeah, adding on to like what Ramona and Fuad said, I also listed Clear Jeopardy as like my first choice, just because I think out of these five choices, to me, it seems like something more tangible that I can visualize being like a feature that we could potentially ideate on Figma or whatever, and also could lead to like potentially solving some of these other issues, just like no big picture overview by having a progress indicator that might give the PMs access to something like at a glance, since that was definitely a big point that was addressed throughout both our first round and second round interviews, was just when planning things, it's always nice for these PMs or people that are organizing the board to see something readily available. So I think having something isolated as like this indicator to see if they're on track for something for sprints would be very useful. My second option was the many steps to search for setup relevant info, but I think it ranked lower for me just because I couldn't really find a clear item that it could like be converted to as a feature.
So for
Yeah.
you, the Clear Jeopardy one is maybe more addressable. Like you can see options for how to
Mhm.
go down a road with that.
Yes.
Yeah, I think my number one is kind of some combination of what Ramona said about labels and what you guys said about no clear jeopardy and progress indicator. Because I was thinking maybe the problem is that there isn't enough surface of new, like relevant metadata that can help them determine the work that's in jeopardy. So maybe the problem is one, there's too much noise on the board, and second, like they don't see the relevant stuff right away. So that's my number one. And then my number two is kind of related to like many steps to search for setup info. So it's like that's like a symptom of a problem. Maybe the deeper issue is that there isn't like a sprint timeline or calendar view that can help them like understand the timeline of things easily.
So given that, what do you all what do you all think about narrowing down on one? Yeah, what do you think? I don't know.
I'm kind of curious like how that's like how what we said is like different from what you and Amanda are thinking.
Well, I think that Amanda and I probably have different perspectives on this because the nature of our roles are different. I think for me, the things that are the most enticing to me are things that could be quick wins. So, like, for example, when you say, like, oh, yeah, there's like no comments indicator or merge request indicator on a card, I'm like, oh, I know that's data that we have. Like, I could, like, the designer who owns this and I could figure something out right away to solve that. But it's like, it's a paper cut, right? It's a little thing, it's not a big feature. What Amanda is thinking about, I would think, I don't want to speak for her, but my perception would be that she's thinking about like a feature, a capability to unlock for a user, something that's like a more holistic thing. So there's probably different things we're drawn to in this. Am I accurate about that?
I like a quick win, but I want to solve the ultimate problem, which is understanding progress. So ultimately, I'd rather put capacity into something like that's going to give me the progress rather than giving more metadata to make your own decision about progress. If it turns out that it's a big lift to do the ideal solution, then I could certainly be won over with smaller. But I mean, that's fairly accurate. But your question was whether I agree with what you've selected or what were you asking, Allison?
Sorry, what'd you say?
I think was it you, Allison, that just said that you're curious to know what we were
It
thinking?
was Aria. I
Oh,
mean,
sorry, Aria.
this is not like this isn't a test. There's no right answer. And
Yeah.
also whatever you
No.
decide here is not like your final answer written in stone. You could change your mind afterwards. So like, you know, don't worry about it. Be confident in your decision. You're making a decision based on evidence that you've gathered. You're like, you know, you're Sherlock Holmesing it. So like I don't want to tell you what I think you should do because it doesn't matter. It's your project. You should feel confident in your decision. You're not making your decision just based on like a whim. It's
I
evidence.
think, but Chad, I think there is a relevant point to be made that there is a piece of this that they want to ship something
Mm,
so that it reflects on their project. And so giving them information about what's shippable
yeah, that's a good point.
helps to ensure that they get the full picture of this project. So I'm happy to provide information on what I see as shippable and where I would put capacity.
Yeah, we're definitely curious to hear more about that. And obviously, just as advice, if that's what Chad's worried about.
I think to Chad's point, if you go something really small, like adding a piece of metadata on cards, right, we could ship that. If you go with something larger, like the progress indicator, I think there's a potential to ship that depending upon what your solution is. You haven't gotten down to solutioning yet, so I can't tell you for sure. But I think either of those are viable.
Yeah, when I think about what increases complexity for this. If you need to add new fields to a database to do it, that increases complexity. If there are like interactions or like kinds of, modes of display or whatever that we don't have design patterns for yet, that increases complexity more on the design side up front when decisions are being made before implementation. When it's something that could lead to performance issues because you have to query a lot of data for it, that's something that could lead to complexity again, which is more in like kind of planning on the engineering side. I would say that like of these columns, if you wanted to like redesign the way that you set up a board, that's big, and it probably includes quite a lot of changes. If you wanted to automate the updating of like health status, it's maybe not as big, but there's a lot to consider in terms of like what goes into that calculation and where that calculation is done and whether or not that needs to be customizable, etc. Overwhelming UI and complex interactions is big and kind of vague. There's like a lot of addressable space there, but kind of judging the success of the project could be difficult in that. Like, how do you know it's not overwhelming anymore? Yeah, I mean, I think for me, columns 2 and 3 seem the most clear about like giving some way of making it clear like how this thing is going overall, or some way of saying like this specific one, is it good or not? Do you need to dig in and get more information? I think they're almost like sort of complementary things that are approaching the same thing from either a holistic view or from like a one piece of it view. It sounds like you all are leaning towards the like progress indicator, something's in jeopardy kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I might say that column 2 isn't viable without column 3.
Yeah, right? Because
Oh.
there's data that would need to feed up into that. Also, I want to say that like it's very common for a research project like this to have a slide that's like, here's some other quick wins we identified that are ancillary to our main point. So like if you feel like there's other stuff that you're like, oh, I wish we could do that, but it doesn't fit into the like the main thing you pick, that's what goes on that list. So that said,
Yeah.
what do you all think? Talk to each other, make a decision. And again, well, okay, sorry. You don't have to make this decision right now in front of me, but I do want you to talk to each other and make the decision, whether you do it now or after the call or what.
Yeah, I know we're like a few minutes late already, so I also don't want to take up people's time, but we'll definitely discuss about it, and um yeah, we'll probably discuss internally and then let you guys know what we think. But it does seem like there are convergence of what we feel like could be worked on as a team. We just have to kind of narrow it down a little bit more.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then you've got usability testing starting on April 15th. Which today's the 10th. So I think you've got some stuff to do between now and then. I would encourage you to record doing like your crazy eights on like potential solutions once you've narrowed down on one of these, mostly just because I'm very curious to see it, and I do think that having that recording will be like helpful for you later on. But yeah, we will be around in Slack, so like if you have questions, ask us async. Love to see stuff, give you some feedback on it if you'd like some feedback. Before we wrap up, any questions or anything you want to ask about or say before we wrap up, to make sure that you're like good to go for the stuff you need to do before you start doing some usability testing?
And not for me at the moment. I think we'll probably just send any relevant documents on Slack. We might have like a testing guide that we write later this week.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And feel free to mention me in Slack if there's any kind of direct feedback you want on, maybe solutions or anything like that that you've come up with.
Yeah, I think once we have solutions, it might be helpful to kind of gauge the feasibility of the solutions with you guys. But yeah.
Cool. I'm excited to see what you all come up with.
Yeah, thank you so much for being on this call with us. Like, it's really helpful to hear your feedback. And we're
Yeah,
both
I'm sorry we didn't get to your whole agenda.
Yeah, thank you guys. We'll take some time as a team to narrow down the scope and then let you guys know.
Cool. Let us know. And
Thank you.
I won't speak for everybody else who's in the like Tufts advisory group at GitLab, but like, if there is something that you want to like get on a call about for something, let us know. We'll see if we can find some time to squeeze it in, because I know that your timeline is short. So
Yeah,
cool.
thank you
All
so
right.
much. Really appreciate it.
Godspeed. See you later.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.